Good morning. I'm Kelly Moore, the Director of Public Information for Horry County Government. Today we are holding a virtual press briefing to update our community on continuing Horry County government operations in response to the impacts of the novel coronavirus COVID-19 within our community. I want to remind everyone that the emergency phone bank is open for questions regarding county-specific functions. The phone bank is operational from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and that phone number is 843-915-5000. We will have a series of speakers today, including Horry County Council Chairman Johnny Gardner, Sheriff Phillip Thompson, Chief of Police Joe Hill, Chief of Fire Rescue Joseph Tanner, and Assistant County Administrator for Public Safety Randy Webster. Just like a typical press briefing, we will take questions at the end from members of the media. We will take a short break during this briefing to allow time for our media partners to ask questions. Media members are reminded to text your questions to Michaela Moskov in the Public Information Office. At this point, I will turn it over to Horry County Council Chairman Johnny Gardner.
Thank you, Callie. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. I'll just make a couple of brief remarks before we hear from our experts about this COVID-19 pandemic update. We are glad that you're tuning in to listen to us. Just remind everybody that things seem to be moving forward. When we first started this, we didn't have much guidance. We had never had this experience before, and our mission was the same then as it's always been, and the same as it is today, to remain mission ready to provide the services that the county needs while protecting our citizens and our residents and our employees. And we've continued to do that. We want to thank everybody for following the guidance that was set out by the leaders and by the health departments with practicing safe hygiene and social distancing and flattening of the curve. And we've done good on that. The governor has extended his order. We're going to follow his guidance. We're going to follow the orders, and we're going to move forward and listen to the experts, and hopefully we'll defeat this thing and get back to business as soon as we could. Remember, at the beginning, people wanted us to shut down as soon as possible, and now I'm getting requests that we open up as soon as possible. We got to find somewhere in the middle, continue to do what we're doing so we can get through this, so when we do open up, we'll be opening up in a safe way and we'll be in compliance with all the orders. This time I'd like to bring up my friend and our Sheriff Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone. Folks, the Sheriff's Office, we're status quo. We're rolling right along like we've been doing. We have some changes from the last time we were here. We're doing these every Tuesday, so I want to say we're one Tuesday closer to being to the end of where we're headed and what our goal is. As far as the courts are concerned, we are having court this week with our folks that are in the detention center. We have a circuit court judge, his staff, solicitor's office, public defender's office, clerk of court's office, probation, pardon, and parole. We're holding court for guilty pleas and arraignments and different things that we need to do to help with the situation at the detention center with our folks there. We're not having trials, and we're unable to do that at this particular time. But we have over 100 cases that have signed up that we're going to be hearing this week. We did 45 yesterday, which that means we got dispositions on 45 cases of people that are there. They're either sentenced to go to Department of Corrections or they're on probation, things of this nature. It's working very well. They're at the detention center with their attorneys, a representative from both the public defender's office and with their attorneys, our solicitor's office, and our staff out there. So the judge is at the courthouse and they're there, and virtually we're able to do a lot of business, and it's really helping in order to help clear our docket and get things going. At least we're doing some court. That's working extremely well. At our detention center, unfortunately, we did have a staff member that tested positive last week for COVID-19. He is now quarantined. He's at home. The inmates that he worked in and around was 2 different housing units. We're staying in 2 different housing units. We have quarantined those particular housing units and they're locked down. Our medical staff is testing. I say testing, they're monitoring for symptoms. We're not doing tests on the individuals that's here, but we are monitoring them with temperature and different issues to see if anyone has the symptoms of COVID-19. So they are being monitored. The employees that worked with our detention officer that tested positive, they're also quarantined and they're at home at this particular time and being monitored and monitoring themselves to let us know. Like I said, we have one staff member obviously that is a major concern when you have an employee and you have a person in your staff that has tested positive. And I ask that you and members of our citizens and the media and the public, if you would, keep them in your thoughts and keep them in your prayers. That's where we're at this particular time. Everything else out there is going well. We haven't had any other issues other than that one. So that's basically where we're at within the sheriff's office. But thank you. Like the chairman mentioned a while ago, it seems to be, I think it's getting better. We certainly aren't getting used to it. But if you would, let's continue to practice safe hygiene, and let's keep that as much of a positive attitude as we can, and let's move forward, because we'll get there, but we're going to have to do it together. So with that, I'd like to introduce our police chief, Chief Joe Hill. Chief.
Thanks, Sheriff. Just to kind of recap, the Horry County Police Department, we're using a military model: improvise, adapt, and overcome. And the way we do that is we look at the current projections, and when this thing first started, we decentralized a lot of our specialty units to bolster staffing in patrol. And fortunately for us, we had no significant outages, no significant issues, so those units are being centralized back into their original mission status. And so things are going well when it comes to that. Some of the other issues that we're dealing with are non-compliant businesses that are deemed non-essential, that are still in operation. As we receive those calls from the public, we do investigate. A lot of those businesses are producing documentation from the state that allows them to remain open. The ones that are not are being warned and shut down. We have not ticketed any businesses as a result of that. We're looking for voluntary compliance, and we are successful in getting that in a lot of cases. And other than that, we're marching on, keeping our community safe. Crime doesn't stop, unfortunately, when we have these emergencies. So our officers are out being very proactive. We had some recent cases that are proof positive that our officers are still on mission task. Other than that, I'm going to turn it over to our fire chief, Chief Joy Tanner.
Good morning, everyone. As we continue to move through this response of COVID-19, I can tell you Horry County Fire Rescue continues to respond on a daily basis, operating pretty much as typical as we normally would, as we talked about before. Our staffing remains stable and strong. We don't have any people out that are positive at all. We're currently stocked well with our supplies and continue to monitor that on a daily basis. I think last week I did say that we averaged 30 to 40 calls of transports to the hospital a day with people who had symptoms or had some type of form of symptom. I can tell you in the last 7 days that's come below 30 people a day. So we see that as a trend for us, a good trend. The burn ban remains in effect, and we continue to do that. Please, we ask you to delay any open burning until after this is over with. We're still getting those calls, and we're still going and putting the fires out. Some people don't know they're under a burn ban, but we remind them of that, and we put the fires out. But please help your neighbors. Please continue to be diligent, considerate of your community and your neighbors all the time, and together we will get through this. At this point, we're going to take a 2-minute break as you submit your questions. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's Randy Webster, Assistant County Administrator for Public Safety. And I just want to again thank everybody for the opportunity to be able to talk to you, to answer your questions. And I really want to thank our staff. I say that every time, but they've just done yeoman's work to come out and support the community and serve as we need to serve. And I really, really appreciate everything that they're doing. We've got some things to work through continually. I don't want people to get to a point, I know people want things to open back up. And unlike we've talked about with hurricanes, you kind of see an end point to those things and activity moving along as those storms approach and fade off and do what they're going to do. Unfortunately, with this event, we really haven't hit the peak yet in our area. And that moves around a little bit, but we're still looking at the end of April, early May for that to happen. So we've all kind of met this point where there doesn't seem to be a lot happening. And so we want some more change to take place in a positive way, and it's just not time right now. We've got to continue to work through this. It appears from what we've seen in other areas that the social distancing may be working and keeping things at bay. Our numbers, as Chief Tanner talked about a minute ago, seem to be down a little bit. Maybe that's the trend, maybe it's not. We need to see how this goes long term. So just please, once again, continue to do the things we're doing, and let's get through this thing. And we don't know when the end will be, but we're all trying to work together and plan for that point and try to think about how we're going to get this economy back up, how we're going to get our folks back to normal, and truly what's the new normal going to look like. We don't know. So just keep that in mind, and just once again, thank you everybody for doing what you're doing and complying with the governor's orders as best that you can, and allowing us to move forward as a community, as a state, as a nation to continue to combat this virus. So I'm open to some questions at this point.
Heather Gale with WPDE says, Governor McMaster and President Trump are both working on plans to reopen the economy. What do you think Horry County needs in order to do that safely?
So what we're looking at this point is working with the state, federal partners, our local communities, and trying to figure out what that's going to look like. And until we start seeing movement from the federal level and the state level to start rescinding some of these orders, we don't know what order that's going to happen in just yet, and we don't know what that's going to mean when that does take place. So it's still a little early to decide, but each day we're working in that direction and trying to figure out when will be the right time. And as I mentioned, we're not near the end of this yet, so it's just going to take a little more time to get there.
The Sun News asks, have any known cases or suspected cases been identified yet in the homeless community? What is the latest on plans for being able to isolate unsheltered homeless showing symptoms?
So we're working with different folks that are helping out with the homeless community. We do have a plan in place, and it's also a very fluid plan because we're doing something that we've never done before in our level. So is FEMA, and so is the state in this non-congregate sheltering issue. But we do have a plan in place. We've had a few folks being looked at, and all that's working in the right direction. To my knowledge, we only have one at this point that's in the system that might be positive. I think we're just still working on the testing results on that. But I'm confident that we do have a process. We've been out to the various camps, so to speak, and sharing information to each one of those to help keep them educated in what to do and moving forward as well.
The Sun News asks, are there any confirmed or suspected cases in our fire or police departments?
We're very lucky right now that that's not happened. Do I think it will stay that way? I think the opportunity is always there for there to be a case. We've seen it in other jurisdictions, not just here, but other areas of the state and even on the national level. So it's very possible that will happen. If that does happen, we'll obviously do the right things, do the right steps to make sure everybody is safe and monitored or tested and following all the proper protocols in place. But as I said, we're lucky right now it has not happened, but it very well could in the days and weeks to come.
The Sun News and WMBF ask, will Horry County be considering furloughs for employees following North Myrtle Beach and Surfside Beach doing so?
So at this point, we've already mentioned the fact that we do not intend to do that based on information and funding and revenues that we see right now. It's a challenge. This is a challenge not only for the county, but all of our communities, all of the state and everybody. So we're working toward a budget. We're working toward trying to find out and
plan out all the revenue streams moving forward. So I can safely say as today, that's not our intent, but it's going to be continually monitored and evaluated. And the longer this thing lasts, there may be other steps we will have to take, but that's hopefully not going to be the case.
The Sun News asks, what measures are being taken to keep jail employees who are in contact with a positive case away from the rest of the population?
I'll ask Sheriff Thompson to respond to that question.
Michaela, please repeat that.
The Sun News asked, what measures are being taken to keep jail employees who are in contact with a positive case away from the rest of the population?
Okay. The employees, like I mentioned earlier when I was up here, the ones that were in contact with our person that tested positive, they are quarantined. They're at home for at least 14 days. We've consulted with DHEC and CDC on what to do, and that's what their suggestion was. I also want to clarify, earlier when I talked about the inmates that were in contact with our employee that tested positive, I used the term testing. We are not testing those folks. They're quarantined, but we are screening them with our medical staff, with taking temperatures and checking their symptoms to see if any of them become symptomatic. So screening was the proper word. I used testing earlier. So. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Jessica Sonardo with WMBF asks, have any additional citations been handed out for people violating the governor's executive order?
So I'll ask Chief Phillip to respond to that question. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. We had an incident last week, and as I mentioned in the previous press conference, we've had an ongoing problem with large parties, and we're call responsive on that. Citizens have been absolutely phenomenal, reaching out to us to tell us about these gatherings, and we did cite a homeowner who allowed this party to go on, but that was after a warning. Our thing is voluntary compliance. We're not out here to cite everybody, but if you don't get the message the first time we come to visit you, we'll visit you again and we'll hand you some paper. But at this time, there's only been one incident where we actually cited a homeowner.
Thanks, Chief.
Jessica Sonardo with WMBF says, over the weekend, county employees were requested to participate in Easter events in Aner and Bucksport. Who organized these events and requested participation? Were any other county agencies or departments involved in the planning of these events? Were precautions taken to protect first responders? And why weren't these events in violation of the governor's executive order pertaining to social distancing?
So I can tell you at this point, fire rescue was involved in that event, but I'll have Fire Chief Joey Tanner-Clinton respond to the question.
Thank you for the question. We did participate this weekend at the request of a council member to unload some Easter baskets. I can assure you that our employees took necessary precautions at the locations to make sure they were protected.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Aaron Rohde with WBTW asks, does the county have a rental ban being extended?
At this time, our ban is in place as it currently was approved by council, and that's right now is where it's at. It's probably a little too early to look to go any further with that.
We have one question from social media regarding reopening beaches.
So beaches are under the governor's executive order. We're doing everything we can to continue to follow his executive order, not just for beaches, for all the different areas that he's put in effect on his executive order. So right now, that's just the way it is, and I don't have any other update to say if that will change or if it will not change.
That's all the questions at this time.
Thank you all very much, and we really appreciate it.